And amen. Well, you've prayed. Let me pray for us all as we get started together. Father God, we thank you for the privilege it is to be part of your church, wherever it is in the world. But we particularly pray for the privilege that you have given us of being part of the church in Basingstoke. Lord, by your Spirit, would you come and enable us to follow your will for your churches, plural, as we work together for the good of your kingdom in this place. Give us wisdom this afternoon. Give us boldness. Give us the faithfulness that we need to do your will and to be ready, your church in this place, for the coming decades of collaboration, that more may see Jesus, your Son. In his name we pray. Amen. Thank you. The reports and things are available through this link as well for those who have devices on them. Well, to the quick matters of the first two items before we come to the main business of the presentation. So firstly, are there any comments on the... Well done, Jonathan. Go for it. Any comments on the minutes from last year's AGM for those who've got good memories and long memories? Okay. For those that were present, are we happy to regard them as correct? Show of hands for those who are with us. And against? Those 5 carries the day. Okay, and then any matters arising from the team leaders report. I'm not going to talk it through. I hope that's been a helpful reminder of all that's been going on. Plus, those in each of the sections I put my aims for 2024 as we've been talking through in the OneChurch leadership team during the year. Are there any particular things that I've missed? Of course, that's always a possibility, as there's quite a lot going on. Well, in which case I will just highlight my thanks, particularly to Will Ross, who's not sadly here to hear it, but I think he's been an outstanding leader of OneChurch and earlier groups for more than 15 years. So a big thanks to him and all those who have supported our work together over those years. Great, welcome to those who've joined us. I'm going to go into item 4, which is, along with then our breakout groups time, the main business for today. So why are we here? Why does OneChurch exist? Are we a churches together group? Are we helping ministers meet together, sometimes praying together and having a yearly unity service like we are today? Or are we churches together plus plus? Some of you will understand the techie in me is coming out here. Well, I believe we are doing more than many churches together groups. We're here under God to love the people of Basingstoke at their time of need. That's one of the things that guides us. And to seek the transformation of the town. Some of this, of course, we do as the separate church communities. But other things take Christians and the churches to work together. And that's what 1CB is here for. One church together working as the people of God together. And I think we're doing more than a simple churches together. And it's not just my doing, of course. This is the fruit of that long, fruitful, faithful labour of many who have invested in the relationships between the churches and the leaders in our town, helping create that environment where collaboration can thrive, has thrived, is thriving. I mean, let's remind ourselves of the number of Christian charities running in our town, even now. All of which I think are ecumenical, involving people from at least 2 churches. And thank you as well to the Starfish trustees who have helped make that happen by helping incubate these works. So before I come, though, to our particular plans, what I want to do is to mention a different group. I want to mention the Gather movement. And thanks to them, our leadership team have been spending some useful time over the last 18 months listening to other churches together groups in other places around this country and learning from them, seeing what God is up to in those places and to helping to increase our vision. And here's the leader of the Gather movement, Roger Sutton, to briefly introduce the group. The sound was on a minute ago.
A network of over 150 unity movements across the United Kingdom. We're linked to another 100 across Europe and another 300
Can you hear that?
across the globe through Movement Day. A unity movement is simply when the church comes together as one body in a more strategic and orchestrated way to bless the city. It's great to see what churches are doing on a day-to-day basis. It's great to see how they care for the poor, how they support those who are vulnerable and build community. But when you bring all that work together as one body, then it becomes an impressive force for good in society. That's what the Gather movement's all about. We're here to share best practice. We're here to help you support and link with others. And we're here to catalyze other movements. So please come and be part of us. If we can help you in any way get started, if we can help you link to other cities and towns, if we can help you respond to the recovery process that we're all going through post-COVID, in whatever way we can help, please don't hesitate, get in contact. God bless you and welcome to the Gather movement.
So you see my report. You've seen that it talks about the events, the websites, the team meetings, all those things that have to go on behind the scenes to help mobilize to people to pray and to serve. Well, what are we ultimately about? Well, it is to, under God, compelled by the love of Jesus, to transform our town. And picking up some of the language that the Gather movement uses, this is how they describe some of that cultural, social, and spiritual transformation that is needed. So firstly, social transformation, to see the church working in a more coordinated and strategic way to bring social justice and environmental solutions, to help communities to thrive in partnership with civic authorities and other sectors. Secondly, spiritual transformation, where of course we have the biggest part to play. Seeing the church unite in a town or city in fellowship, prayer, evangelism, and discipleship, sharing in ministry and releasing Christians to play their role in society. Really important, I think, to both, in a sense, what we do on Sundays as well as what we do on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. And then the cultural transformation piece. To see the values of Jesus transform a town or a city. Don't we need that? Through shaping how people relate to each other personally and corporately, to bring hope, peace, and joy to all. I mean, what if the churches were to opt out of doing this, being involved in this? Then the work of all of those areas would be significantly reduced. But what if the churches were working together in a more coordinated way? Well, greater transformation, greater partnership, greater things are possible. Well, here's our current logo. You're familiar with this, with the four pieces, the four jigsaw pieces, which reflect the four aims that we have: fellowship, communication, prayer, and mission. And we understand that mission comes in two parts. Firstly, sharing the gospel. For example, in recent years, that has looked like Eastdrop Live events. And the Who Cares initiative and the Try Praying initiative were, if you like, bridge-building steps towards this gospel-sharing work. But then there's the other half of it, the loving support that we give, and the long, long list of social action that is going on in the town. I don't need to remind you about it. But we've recommitted earlier in this year as the leadership team to be doing both. We don't want to just become social workers, but also our sharing the gospel is given legs and given ears by the practical work that we do in support across the town. So what I'm going to do is talk about each of those, but then I'm actually going to add a fifth element to this circle because we realise that there's another part that we are doing, which I'll explain in a second. So firstly, though, of course, prayer, because it all starts with prayer. And this verse from Jeremiah guides us. Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Pray to the Lord. And so we want to continue to hold termly townwide prayer and praise gatherings. We had one a few weeks ago at St. Michael's. Weekly prayer and fellowship gatherings for leaders. And then lastly, continue to work towards covering every street in our town or our area in prayer. We made some progress on that last year in a couple of areas of the town, but we need to catch up the rest of them. Next, fellowship. We're connecting a good number of the ministers and pastors in the town, but we want to connect to more, particularly those who are in the independent churches. And some of those are bivocational. Some of those are doing a full-time job as well as leading a church. And we want to do a better job of connecting with them to see how we can support them in that particularly challenging work that they're doing, including providing a retreat day for local leaders. Again, we're not trying to take the place of other things provided by church networks, but for those that don't have those opportunities, then we want to help provide something. Then in loving support, that side of our mission, well, there's quite a lot that we have planned. We want to hold our second civic breakfast. The last one hosted at the Salvation Army was great last year, and we want to continue to build on that, including the better relationships with a wide range of the civic groups, not just the council, but NHS partners, police partners, others in the justice sector too. And increasingly what we're trying to do is to provide a trusted single front door to the churches in the town. You see, if you're part of the police or part of the health services and you've an idea that the churches might be able to help you with something, you can't make any progress because there are just too many churches to sensibly, productively talk to. So what we're trying to do is to say, we will provide that front door for you, and that we will do that harder work of coordinating behind the scenes, because we know who's interested in these different things already. We want to hold another Together for Basingstoke summit to encourage and to further equip and to coordinate between the Christian charities in our town and the church leaders. And we also want to hold a healthcare community transformation gathering, looking at a published model from Share Jesus International to see what could we do more in the way of community transformation across the strength that we have about the number of Christians involved in healthcare in our town and our area. Now, most of this is coming under what we now call the Together for Basingstoke name. This name for the loving support side of the OneChurch work. We've realised it's helpful to have this separate name to make it easier to have some of the conversations and potentially apply for grant funding from some of the organisations out there, rather than go straight to a group which has as its constitution sharing Jesus, which obviously we want to be doing as well. And we're fortunate that we've been able over the last year and a bit to employ David Grant here as our Together for Basingstoke enabler, one day a week. And he's been doing that work of building relationships with all sorts of different civic groups and individuals, and also trying to be that better coordinator amongst the Christians, amongst the churches and the Christian charities. And so it's to enable good things to happen. The other day I was watching Dragon's Den, and I was thinking actually this is a bit like an early stage in the Dragon's Den of saying we want to invest in relationships in the town, and we're not going to see huge things coming out of it very soon. We're not going to get a first quarter profit straight away, but we want to invest so that in the future years better things will come. And so the other thing that we need to be doing is to find funding to continue this T4B enabler role. I'll talk a bit more about that in a little bit later. So that's our plans on the loving support side. When it comes to sharing the gospel, over the years of the pandemic and since, we haven't been doing clear gospel sharing initiatives that are town-wide. Obviously, we're doing the individual things in our churches. But what we have been doing is to continue assessing opportunities, thinking together and researching what is it that the Lord is calling us to. We do have a separate pot of money that can be used, but only for this activity. But we don't want to just spend it on the first thing that we hear about. So we're testing carefully, listening to different groups to see where God might be wanting us to do a town-wide gospel outreach next. So those are the three of the four areas. I said I was going to introduce a fifth area, and we've realized that we're doing a work of equipping the saints. Some of us were at a wonderful session last year with Mel Lacey called Growing Young Disciples. And she came and she spoke to, how many of us were there? So 60 or so, helping just equip us understand the times that our children and teenagers live in, how to encourage them, how to build their trust and faith in God when the world is increasingly turning away. We hope that we're going to be getting many to our Lent seminar series, God's Better Story. It started here on Thursday evening. It was fantastic. Pete is a really good, clear, compassionate speaker. I'm seeing some nods for those who are here. So the next one is at Sarum Hill Centre this coming Thursday. So that's an example of something that we're doing that we can put on across the town that an individual church probably couldn't be doing for themselves. Next, we want to try out a Spheres of Influence session or two to encourage workplace prayer and ministry. I'm going to come back to that in a minute as well. And then hoping that the seminar series goes well this year, wouldn't it be nice to do another one on a different topic next year? So talk to me if you have ideas, but this is what I've got in my head at the moment, something on science and faith. Wouldn't it be great to get some prominent Christians who are scientists, not Christian scientists, in to help to give them an opportunity to talk about all that fires them up, both their science and their faith in God, to help us see that, of course, there isn't a contradiction between them. Anyway, that's just one idea. And then underneath all of this, the communication piece. We want to grow the email list to more local Christians, grow the WhatsApp group to more local ministers and their partners and pastors, and then do some other things to support the work. So that's what we've got in plan, and most of that is mentioned briefly in my team leaders report. So I'm just going to take a swig of water. Spheres of influence. I want to take a minute to explain what I mean by this and what we're working towards. And I find this exciting because it is both about mission and discipleship together. Now, here's a way of picturing that we have a number of Christian groups in the town, each of which have Christians in them. The Christians are the dots. And there's some overlap. We tend to have our gatherings and we tend to be in several different ones. And as we hope, we'd find that under the influence of the Holy Spirit, the vision and the values of the kingdom are becoming a reality around us. And this is good. This is right. But what I want to do is to infect the rest of the town with this. And the good news is, isn't it, that we don't live in our churches, or at least most of us, but we scatter out, don't we? We scatter out into all sorts of places for most of the week. We scatter to schools, to offices, to factories, to gyms, to playgrounds, to food banks, to shelters. And some of those will have a number of different Christians in them. But often as not, they will be from different churches, won't they? There could be several Christian staff in a school, but they're likely from different churches. And this is what we want to see, don't we? We want to see all of Basingstoke's Christians praying for the kingdom to come, living out the kingdom and acting for the kingdom, speaking of the kingdom in the places where God has placed us most of the week already. In the schools, in the gyms, in the offices, the places, the spheres of influence that we already have. We don't need to make new relationships, find new people. We already have them. Where we are 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week already. Where we know others and we are known. Hopefully, others being aware that we are on Team Jesus. So it is about being fruitful for the kingdom where you already have influence. And there are a number of parachurch groups that have been doing good work supporting this sort of initiative for a number of years already. One of which is the London Institute for Contemporary Christianity. And in fact, they were here and they came and spoke about this initiative to the local deanery back a few months ago. And St Mark's Kempshott has already been using their material, for example, on this initiative. But over the last year, I've come to realize that the Lord has been calling me particularly to lead this idea, not just for Christchurch, in fact, not for Christchurch, but town-wide. And when I was first thinking this is what the Lord was calling me to do, I was thinking, but why? I mean, I'm not sure I can manage it at Christchurch, let alone the town-wide. But I think this is part of the reason. It is because we are ecumenical in our workplaces, in our schools, in our colleges, in lots of places already. And what if we could find each other? What if we could be praying together? What if we could be digging into those things that are difficult, the pressing issues in that particular workplace? I mean, I as a church leader have a rough understanding of the challenges and the particular questions and ethical things that are faced in a workplace. But of course, I don't know the particular ones in a particular place because I'm not there. But our Christians do. So what if we can encourage them, get them together to pray? No, I can't do this on my own, of course. It needs as many as possible of our church leaders to do a couple of simple things, and I just want to explain what they are. The first is simply to identify who is it in your fellowship that are in these different spheres of influence. Now, it's obvious between us already that we have lots of people in healthcare, lots of people working in the hospital, for example, and other places. But we may find that between us, for example, we may have 3 Christians from different churches all working in the same law firm or at Tesco's, or whatever it might be. Let's help identify those people. And then OneChurch, with help from LICC, we want to then invite to gather, to encourage and to equip people. And then back to the churches and the church leaders to watch for the fruit, to ask what's going on, to encourage and to help grow this whole activity. The good news is that, at least in my experience, this grows people as disciples, as well as then raising more prayer in our spheres for people who don't know Jesus, which leads to more gospel opportunities to speak about Jesus. And it's a virtuous circle of discipleship, prayer, and mission. And the more I hear from other people doing this in other places, the more I think this is, actually, we don't have an option not to do this. This is where we need to be working. So church leaders, please help me to identify the right groups. We're going to trial this in a couple of areas, and so I'm going to be in touch about this shortly. Well, in summary, what have I been talking about? I've been talking about the standard work that I think many churches together groups do, doing these things, and that's great. But OneChurch has a bigger vision, frankly. So the question then is, how do we get there? And I'd like to say that the road ahead is straight, smooth, and with a bright light at the coming at us. But we know that in the Christian life, things are rarely like that. It's more normally perhaps like this. Rather bumpy. There are twists and turns, although the destination is pretty clearly in sight. But for OneChurch at the moment, the road ahead is rather more like this. We have a roadblock. Now, I mean, it's unlikely that the roadblock looks precisely like this, although I have lived in a place where your commute could be disrupted in this way. But the roadblock is money. So let me explain just where we are financially. And Mark is on hand. We're going to cover finance in more detail, but Mark, our new treasurer, is here as well, who can guide us on particular details if we need them. But I just want to paint the big picture. And so firstly, expenditure. So you see there that the colours are consistent. So there are general running costs, including communications and including a small number of hours that we pay for of administrative time. We spend on training and equipping. But the biggest single thing that we've been doing recently is paying for the T4B enabler. And we want to increase the training and equipping, keeping the others are more or less the same. But we want to increase this training and equipping so that we can be bringing in people to train. And that costs. I mean, not hugely, but it costs. The challenge is the income. So some of the income comes from subscriptions. That's what we ask churches to provide. A little bit from events. But actually, in 2023, we covered our costs by using quite a lot of the savings that we have, so the money that we had in the bank from previous donations. And quite simply, we're going to be running out of that money. We can only fund the enabler for another month or two. Mark is nodding. So there's the challenge. We have this gap, 7,500 or so. So what am I suggesting we do about it? Well, thankfully, I've been thinking, and we have as the leadership team, who incidentally haven't seen these slides before, and I hope that I'm putting them across in a good way, what we've been talking about. So the standard things for churches together look to me like leading prayer, providing fellowship, sharing, communicating, and smaller scale mission initiatives. In the green there are those bigger things that we want to do, to be investing in the spheres, the equipping work, and enabling the Together for Basingstoke work. Being that front door, do you remember? Front door to the churches and better coordination behind the scenes in the churches and charities. And we have three ways that we get income in: church subscriptions, donations, and potentially grants. So the three options. The first is basically to do the standard level and not do the more advanced things that I think God is calling us to do. And we can continue roughly as we are, church subscriptions and some smaller donations from people. But I want to do better than that. To invest in the spheres and equipping as well, we could do that if we roughly double the church subscription, but I want to do more than that. We want to do it all. We want to do this work, and we want to continue getting the T4B enabling really going. To stop it now would, I think, be a tragedy. To lose out on the relationships that we're beginning to build and potential fruit in the future. And to do that just by church subscriptions doesn't feel the right way to do it. So what we want to do is really to become a partner in local mission for Christians and churches in this town. Hopefully we will get grants. We have applied for 2 grants from local sources over the last year. Sadly, we weren't successful in either of them. But those of you who have done applications for grants know how much time it takes. And actually, you've almost got to employ somebody to have the time to do the grant applications for that person. So some of David's time has gone on this. So raising the difference. But we think we can do that if we just have 60 partners in local mission. That would be 50 individuals giving £1 a month and 10 churches giving £500 a year as part of their mission giving. So we're saying that we think we need OneChurch to become a mission partner in a way that we haven't needed to be so far, church subscriptions being the way to do it. But we think we'll need to keep the church subscriptions as well. But something like this, actually, we can clear that £7,500. And the Lord said, I didn't quite understand what the Lord said there. But actually, this is the point that we need to hear from you. My very last build being, is this the right vision? Is this the right vision for us? So, over to you. We are going to take some time now, firstly in groups and then individually as well, to put some questions up, and we're going to switch over laptop, and in fact, let's do that now. So David's going to put up a slide with a link to Mentimeter. Some of you have used Mentimeter at our events before, but it's a way on your phones or tablets you can give some responses. We're going to put these up as well to put some questions up, which are more, there's a range of questions about how do we see OneChurch at the moment, and what would you like to say to the OneChurch leadership team, as well as this particular question, is this the right way to be going forward with this partnership in funding? So over to David. If you turn it on, it will.
Just before we look at this, I just want to give an example of how working in a sphere operates, if I can. So many, many years ago, 2002 in fact, I started working at Farnborough Sixth Form College, and initially I was going by train and walking up from the station because that kind of worked because it was the summer. But on one particular morning, I was busy thinking about how could I as a Christian be in my workplace really engaged with my colleagues and transforming that college for Christ. And on one particular morning, I happened to meet a colleague who was walking up, but I discovered she was a Christian. So I asked her, is there a Christian union for the students? She said, yeah, there is. About a dozen students get together once a week to have fellowship together and try and have some impact in the college. And I said, well, what about staff? Is there any staff prayers? And she said, no, not really. So I said, well, what about we invite Christians on the staff? Because we knew there probably were many, at least a dozen we could think of, and maybe more. And so we agreed together that we would meet on a morning before college to pray for about 15 minutes once a week. And over the course of the next 8 years, faithfully, members of teaching staff did that. I started to go along to the Christian Union to sort of kind of give the students an air of respectability and kind of help provide some continuity. And by the time I left the college there at 2010, the number of students gathering in the Christian Union was about 120. And we were finding as praying members of staff that colleagues would come to us and say, would you pray for this situation? And, or can you give me advice on this situation in their life? Quite difficult situations people are facing. It's just an example how, even a small number of people taking that step, letting it be known. I mean, we used to also have contact with some chaplains who came in from local churches. We asked the chaplains to write an article for our sort of termly newsletter that went out to all the staff. They very rarely did, so I wrote things for them to say and put that in there, just sort of nuggets of Christian wisdom that I felt would be blessing to, a bit like I do in the weekly update, actually, from time to time. So, but that's just an example of how this kind of thing can happen. And I just realised that I've wasted an opportunity, because I should have asked you to be finding the Mentimeter, shouldn't I, while I was talking. So, if you've not used this before, it is fairly simple. All you need is a mobile phone, a smartphone. You can either scan the QR code, if you can read it from there, or you can go to www.menti.com and then enter the code 5522321. But
if you need Wi-Fi, then Christchurch Guest, the password is Jesus is Lord. Capital J, capital I, capital L. So what we're going to ask is if you, because we realise not everybody will have access to this, but if you can gather into groups of 3 or 4 or so, feel free to change some chairs or move around. You can unhook the chairs if you like. And then talk about these questions that will come up one by one together as you work through this. And then in about 15 minutes, we've got another thing that we're going to give out, this time paper. I know, paper, to fill in as well. David and I will roam in case there are any questions.
Okay, has everyone who's got a mobile phone managed to get onto that website? Yeah. Everyone happy? Excellent. You don't have to show me. That's what I would do with a class of kids, is show me your phone so I can see what, except we're not allowed to even have them in the classroom anymore. But yes. Okay. So in your groups, the first question for you to think about is, which part of the prayer aims for 2024 are you most keen to see? This is a sliding scale, because you might actually want to weight them equally. So you can put them at 10, which is the far right, or you can put it somewhere in between. But just talk to the people around you. Make sure that anyone who hasn't got access to this on the phone... Sorry?
Can you go back to the slide? Back slide.
Yep.
It's actually at the top, so 5524 2321.
If you've done the QR code, it should go straight in, I think. Yeah. Okay. So have a chat amongst yourselves in your little groups. Make sure that anyone who hasn't got access to a phone themselves can contribute to your conversation. And then as many as you've got phones, starts the question. The first one is just these first two.
People can't read that.
Go forward.
You should now be able to go at your own pace. We've changed the setting. So you should now be able to go forward at your own pace without waiting for David. Yeah, but I think David had to reset something. Sorry, he had to reset, but you should now be able to go forward in your own pace. Next. Okay, we'll see you. Okay. Friends, you will probably get to a question about a unity review, and we've gone on a little longer than I was expecting. So what we were going to do is give out at this point a printed sheet which says Gather Movement Unity Review, and then there are some marks from this that you would then put in as your answers, a numeric mark that you would put in. For now, because there are quite a lot of questions here, we'll skip that, so you can just leave it on the 0 marks, 0 numbers, and just skip that item. But what we'll do is we'll give this out, and if over tea time you want to fill this in and leave it, just the paper copy for us, we'd be grateful for that. So I'll leave those out at the back, but you can skip the question about the Unity review, okay? Thanks.
If you jump across that, there are a couple more questions just to finish off. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, and there are 2 more questions after that we would like to get to. I don't need it. Friends, I think you're not all finished, but I'm aware of the other things that we need to be completing before we have our tea, and there will be musicians who are going to come in and practice in here. So feel free to continue that once we get to tea, and as I say, please fill in the Unity review. But I'm going to take us into finances, and then the governance and administration and any other business, if that's okay. So, you've had these reports, or many of you will have had these by email. There are some, oh no, all the spare copies of the printed copies have gone. But we need to approve the 2023 accounts that Mark Hill has kindly provided for us and prepared for us. Trevor Woodgate was treasurer for part of the year, and then when he moved away from Basingstoke, then Mark has stepped in. That's right, there shouldn't be anything on the screen at this point. So firstly, we are going to ask any questions about the 2023 accounts, if you have any. Mark, do you want to come up? Because not all of us will know you. Do you want to come up so that we can see you? And you can hover here in case we have any questions. Well, only if you only got any questions. Okay. Oh, David.
Well, this
So this is about the accounts for 2023 first. Okay. So in which case, are we content to, I always forget what the right verb is. Is it adopt or accept? Adopt the accounts for 2023. All those in favour? Any against? In which case, we say thank you, Mark, very much, and Trevor as well, before you for these. And we will also be thanking Colleen, who has done the independent examination of that. Okay, we'll come to the 2024 question in a second. Thank you. Do you want to sit down again? Next question. Are we content to appoint Mark as our treasurer for the rest of this year? I am going to just do this on a show of hands. All in favour? Close your eyes. Any against? You are duly appointed. Thank you very much, Mark. And then are we happy to appoint, if Colleen is happy to be appointed again, our independent examiner for another year? All in favour? Any against? None? Okay. Then on to a question where we might want some discussion. But first, David, do you have a question about going forward?
Yes, you want individuals to sign up to a monthly, but you don't, I've just understood, you don't do gift day. And frankly, I understand that this is you're a very small organisation to do gift day.
David, the reason we don't do gift day is because...
Can you use the microphone?
Yeah.
So the question is about doing gift aid.
Yes.
Testing 1, 2.
Yeah.
I'll share. We as OneChurch don't have a gift aid direct facility, but we do operate under the Starfish. We do operate under the Starfish enterprise.
Switched.
Does some gift aid facilities, and looking at that, would it be feasible? We know we do it through CFL. Would it be feasible to do it for OneChurch as well?
The bank account for OneCB has Starfish mentioned on it.
Yes, it is.
It does.
It does, yeah.
It's not on. Just speak.
Just checking that the OneCB bank account has Starfish.
Yes, it does.
So
It does.
anything that goes in there, then Starfish can pay gift aid on.
Historically, we've only received money from churches, and because churches are not income tax earners, then we can't claim gift aid on those. But if we now start to receive gifts from individuals, my understanding is yes, we can claim gift aid on those. But we will need to create some paperwork and things to make that happen. But there's nothing to stop us do that.
But in the meantime, if you did want to make it, like contributions, as Maggie's just said, they would be marked OneChurch.
Thank you for the question. We will make that happen if we can. So if we are content to move ahead, once we look at the results from this, assuming we go ahead and seek donations from churches and individuals, then we will put something together to make this more clear and more obvious, and we'll try to solve the gift aid question. Thank you. So we have discussed the subscription levels for 2024, and what we'd like to do is to have 3 levels, not 2, based on the number of adult members. You see it on the agenda here. £85 for churches under 50 members, £160 for up to 200 members, and £240 for those over 200 members. That's what we're proposing. Any Other suggestions?
Well, only just to say, if you're asking for individual churches to consider giving an extra £100 a month or something like that, whether there's an option within the subscription to at that point adopt a higher rate or a higher amount. And so say this is the donation amount, but you could, as a church, decide to give more at the annual level as well as the monthly.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so what we want to do is sort of separate and say, well, we hope that everybody will still continue a subscription, and we look for more donations as well. Well, in which case, I will... Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
I'm very conscious of the number of churches on the list for this last year. It feels very small for the size of Basingstoke. I was wondering if some of the churches actually may be in a position where even that nominal, is that part of the reason why some churches are not signing up to be part of OneChurch Basingstoke? So I wondered if there was some option for a discretionary kind of, because we want to be as representative of the churches in Basingstoke so that we can be as big a voice as possible into the council. If finance is a reason for people not being a part of, it would be a shame to have that as a barrier.
The communication we send out always does indicate it's a voluntary contribution from the church, and that whether or not they make a contribution, they are part of OneChurch Basingstoke, because we believe that is a spiritual truth. You know, there is only one church in this town. It's the Church of Christ in this town. It has many, many expressions, but
If I was a grant-making organisation, I would be looking at these accounts and saying you only represent about 10% of the churches in Basingstoke, therefore you do not represent and therefore I would not grant. So if we had some means where they could positively join rather than passively join, and actually therefore we could say we have a membership of 100 churches or 80 churches, but so many are, we're contributing. I think that would give us a lot more strength and a lot more power to influence us on different as an organisation.
Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. We'll take that to the leadership team and work out how we can do that. We have introduced the third tier partly to make it easier for the smaller churches to subscribe, but we'll take that thought as well. Well, can I propose that we adopt the levels that are there on the agenda for subscriptions for 2024? All those in favour, first will raise your hands. Then those against. Okay, that was carried. Carried by all. But thank you for the suggestions on that. Right, David is going to now take over. Do you want to do it from there?
I'll do it from here if that's okay. I'm not going to say a huge amount because some of the stuff